कृपा बोले पाई चैतन्य निताई तब कृपा बोले पाई चैतन्य निताई दया करो सिया चांद प्रभु श्रीनिवास दया करो रामचंद्र संग मागे नरोत्तम रामचंद्र संग मागे नरोत्तम दास रामचंद्र संग मागे दया करो मोरे दया करो चैतन्य प्रभु दया करो मोरे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु दया करो मोरे के दयालो जगत संसार के दयालो जगत संसार हरे कृष्ण
Hare Krishna, Radhanath Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Gopal Bhatta Prabhu, my sincerest obeisances unto you and to all the people who are assembled. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
It is so nice to be able to spend time with you. Thank you so much. We know your time is extremely valuable.
Your association is making my time valuable. Thank you.
Oh, Krishna. Everyone knows you. Uh, no introductions are needed. You're most famous person. Still, I was thinking just as a point of introduction, you have as one of your points of emphasis in your leadership the notions, more than notions, the mandates that come from the third verse of the Shikshastakam. And they include being humble, and they include make no offense to anyone, any living entity. And of course, I've had the privilege of knowing you for a long time now, and I can say I can never ever remember you saying a critical word about anyone, even though much of the work that you and I have done together relates to the GBC and managerial leadership matters. Could you just spend a few minutes before we begin the celebration of Sri Advaita Acharya's appearance day, which I'll give another short intro to that once you're done. Tell us a little bit about this third verse, how you ended up deciding that this would be a point of emphasis in your leadership with all the devotees that look to you for guidance.
Thank you so very much, and I'm so grateful to be with everyone today on this very auspicious day. Trinadapi sunichena toro ibasihishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. From my studies of Srila Prabhupada's books, I found that this verse is not just an instruction. It's at the very core of the heart of the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all of our acharyas of the Guru Parampara. In my readings, I found that all of our great acharyas historically personify and exemplify the practice of these truths. In Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami tells that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he established the all-night kirtan at Srivas Thakur's home, he gave this simple instruction of Trinadapi Sunichena. And there it is said that we should, on the string of the holy name, we should enshrine this verse and keep it in our hearts always. I had read that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he was asked about Siddha Pranali, about meditation to realize our eternal identity in the spiritual world, he described that our meditation for this purpose, for this goal of life, is this verse, Trinadapi Sunichena. One of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers, when Prabhupada was still living as a grihasta, doing his occupation, one of his godbrothers, he asked him, what is the formula in which we can chant the holy name purely and the name of God will spread throughout the world? And Srila Prabhupada said the secret formula is Trinadapi Sunichena Taror Iba Sahishnana Amani Namanadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. Unless we sincerely aspire to follow the spirit of this verse, then we cannot chant Krishna's name purely. And until we can chant Krishna's name purely in this mood of a servant of a servant of the servant, then all of the higher revelations and realizations on the path of bhakti cannot be realized. So this teaching is at the very heart of the lifestyle of a Gaudiya Vaishnava. And there can never, ever be too much emphasis on this verse. How we apply it according to time, place, and circumstance, requires sometimes guidance and realization. But this verse should never leave us. It should be a compass in which we navigate our spiritual progress.
Much appreciated.
Thank you, Gopal Bhatta Prabhu.
So we have this group of devotees, the GBC Strategic Planning Team. And when the COVID started, we thought we needed to create awareness of that. But at the same time, we also saw the value of, it was kind of like, nobody would ever wish this terrible thing upon humanity, of course. But then, as devotees, we want to take advantage of that at the same time. So we started to demonstrate to the devotional community how well we can stay connected. And thus, during this period of time, we've managed to put together over 175 interviews, 300 posts, and largely those posts are about devotional care in our spiritual life. But then we also informed people about COVID. Right at the beginning of the year, and this is, of course, something that you know already, so I'm really speaking to our audience for a minute. We thought, okay, what can we do to assist the devotional community in celebrating in the deepest way Gaur Purnima? And so we looked at the calendar and decided, okay, Gaur Purnima, in a sense, gets moving forward with the appearance of Sri Advaita Acharya. And he came ahead of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then there are so many other holy days and so many things. So we said, okay, fine. We're going to concentrate on the Chaitanya Charanamrita. And our general purpose is to encourage people to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita and go deeper into this most amazing and fundamental literature that Srila Prabhupada kindly translated for us. So during these 35 days, starting today, and starting with you leading us off, we will immerse ourselves into the Chaitanya Charitamrita, covering Srila Prabhupada's momentous achievement, how the teachings are rooted, how our teachings are rooted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Vaishnava relationships that are all described that become the template and the guidance for how we should relate. Even we will talk about the prasadam of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. We will speak about the inner purposes of Sri Gauranga Lila and approaching Radha Krishna being possible only by approaching Gaur Nitai and like that. So this event continues. You are kindly starting us off on Sri Advaita's appearance day, and we'd like to encourage the devotional community to stay with us from this moment all the way to Gaur Purnima. So we want to thank you for leading us. And with that in mind, then maybe we could just begin with the compassion and the example of compassion that Sri Advaita Acharya manifested in his arrival ahead of time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's arrival. Tell us about that.
Thank you very much. The Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita explains how Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent many of his eternal associates to incarnate in this world before himself, to prepare the way. And how he did it is so instructive to all of us, especially in regard to Sri Advaita Acharya. Advaita Acharya, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes he is Advaita because he is Krishna himself. He is an expansion of Mahavishnu. As we know, Mahavishnu, by his will, the entire cosmic manifestation takes place. In each and every universe, Mahavishnu incarnates as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, as the super soul of the universe. And then Mahavishnu, through Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, incarnates as Kshirodakshaya Vishnu to be the Paramatma within the heart of every living entity. This is Advaita Acharya. He is non-different than the Paramatma in our heart. He is non-different than the creator of the entire cosmic manifestation. He's an expansion of Krishna. Therefore, his name is Advaita. Acharya is his name because he especially came to the world to propagate pure, unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Lord. It was on this day, the 7th day of the waxing moon of the month of Magh in the year 1434, that Advaita Acharya appeared. His father was Kuvera Pandit and mother Nabha Devi. It is said that he appeared in a village called Navagram. At a particular time in his youth, he went on a pilgrimage. And it's described in our Shastras that when he was in Vrindavan, he discovered the Madan Gopal or Madan Mohan deity under a tree that's still there, Advaitavat. And that became the Sambandha Murti of our whole Sampradaya. The deity that was discovered by Advaita was originally installed at the time a generation after Krishna by Vajranabha. And Advaita gave to his disciple, and his disciple gave that Murti to Srila Sanatana Goswami. Later on, Advaita Acharya was living in Shantipur. And it was in Shantipur that his profound, all-encompassing compassion was revealed. He was the leader of the Brahmin community. He had everything. He had a wonderful wife, wonderful home in every way. But he was in great sadness thinking about the people who were suffering in this world. Srila Prabhupada describes that the nature of a Vaishnava is paradukkha dukhi, that another person's happiness is our happiness and another person's suffering is our suffering. This is actually the nature of one who loves God. Advaita Acharya personified this principle in such a way. He was literally crying to see his brothers and sisters in this world, in all species of life, bereft of love for Krishna. He saw that some people were suffering due to bad karma and some people were enjoying due to good karma, piety and impiety. But both conditions were suffering. And he saw people, philosophers and various transcendentalists trying to obliterate their suffering by becoming one with God. And he saw in all these situations that without love for Krishna, without devotional service to the Lord, there can be no true happiness. When one tastes love of Krishna, one truly feels compassion for those who are without love for Krishna. Srila Prabhupada often quoted Pandita Samadarshana. A great devotee sees everyone with equal vision and therefore feels for everyone and wants to give them that opportunity that is inherent within every soul to know and love Krishna. Advaita Acharya, as we have explained, he's Mahavishnu. Vrindavan Das Thakur explains he's Sadashiva, the original Shiva who lives in Vaikuntha. He's the original Purusha, or the creator of the whole cosmic manifestation. And yet, he's feeling himself unqualified to give pure devotional service in the mood of the residents of Vrindavan to the people of this world. Advaita Acharya was feeling so much transcendental suffering in his heart due to compassion. He was regularly giving classes in Shantipur from the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. But he believed only if Krishna directly from Goloka Vrindavan descends to this world can he spread the Yuga Dharma of the chanting of the holy names of the Lord in a way that people can receive that highest benediction of Vrindavan Bhakti.
Walking down the path that Sri Advaita Acharya took on this compassion, is this something that develops, I guess, with our own individual spiritual progress, that we naturally become more and more compassionate? But is compassion something that we should also practice and develop that compassion through practice also, even if maybe our hearts still hold some impurities in them? In other words, should we
Serving through serving. So Srila Prabhupada and all of our acharyas, headed by Sri Advaita Acharya, their life personified this principle of compassion. The six Goswamis, they lived in compassion, not just to be in the holy Dham and worship Krishna, but they were living in compassion in the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the well-being of all of us. For the whole world, they were revealing Vrindavan and the treasures of bhakti. So, Mahajano Yenagata Sapanta, the path to know Krishna is to follow in the footsteps of the great souls. So, whatever level we're on, we follow four regulative principles, even though we may have desires to break them. But we follow them because that's the path, whether we feel like it or not. And in a positive way, Srila Prabhupada asked us to distribute books, develop temples, create communities. The whole purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement in every aspect is to share bhakti with each other as a spiritual family and to make it accessible to the world. It's non-different than our sadhana to express our gratitude to Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas by assisting them in their compassion. I may not feel any compassion, but if I want to serve my Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, then I try to act as an instrument of his compassion. And that is an inseparable part of how we make spiritual progress. Srila Prabhupada explained in Krishna consciousness, in giving we receive. And what pleases Krishna most? When we're helping each other to love Krishna.
Includes then, this includes not just serving the Vaishnavas, but serving all of humanity. And if I've understood what you said, the more we serve humanity, the more compassion we will experience. Is that part of what you said?
If we examine the spirit of what seva or service means, on a very external level, it means doing what we're supposed to do. But the spirit of service is that we're striving to achieve and that we're trying to apply to our lives is samsiddhir haritoshanam. We're engaging in those activities that please Krishna. And Madbhakta Pujabhyadika, there's nothing that pleases Krishna more than serving his devotees. And we are in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said he's a fruit seller and he has the fruits of love of God and he wants to share these fruits with everyone in every town and every village throughout creation. And he wants all of his devotees to help him to distribute these fruits. That's what pleases Lord Chaitanya. That's what pleases Srila Prabhupada. And that means to live as an instrument of compassion. And that's the compass in which we navigate the success of whatever we do. Is it pleasing Krishna? Is it assisting our Guru Maharaj in his mission of compassion?
Well, let us then, since in the last few minutes you've spoken a number of times, Srila Prabhupada. So could you please just tell us how Srila Prabhupada exemplifies this compassion that Sri Advaita came with and manifested as part of the Gaura Lila?
Advaitacharya, in his spirit of feeling the sufferings and praying for the happiness of all living beings on the bank of the Ganges, he prayed to Krishna to descend. He read from the Gautamiya Tantra that if someone offers a flower or a leaf with some water with devotion to Krishna, then Krishna becomes subordinate to the love of that devotee. So in this spirit, Advaitacharya on the bank of Ganga was offering tulsi leaves, tulsi manjaris, along with water from the Ganga. And with that offering, he was loudly crying out for Krishna to descend. This was his vow. This was his austerity. He was determined. My name is not really Advaita unless Krishna descends in response to my prayers. And this was his faith, that Krishna is so much obliged to a devotee who is offering a leaf, a flower, or water with devotion, that he will personally come. This is the power of bhakti. So Advaita, he spent his time in this way, and it's very interesting. It was at that time that he met with Haridas Thakur. Advaitacharya was the leader of the Brahmin community in Shantipur. Haridas Thakur was from an untouchable background. He was considered an outcast by the orthodoxy of society. But Advaita embraced him as his closest friend and brother. He would feed him prasad with his own hands. He honored and glorified Haridas Thakur in ways that are so much a part of our life and our hearts. Haridas Thakur and him shared the same mission of compassion. Haridas was chanting 300,000 names every day to bring Krishna down to this world, and Advaitacharya was offering his prayers and his simple worship to bring Krishna down. And in answer to their prayers, Krishna, in the mood of Sri Radha, descended to this world to give Krishna consciousness to everyone. Srila Prabhupada so much personified this spirit of Sri Advaitacharya. In fact, in Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, His Holiness Satsvarup Goswami Maharaj, he writes that when Srila Prabhupada was in college, he was in a theatrical group for one drama. It was the only drama Prabhupada ever did on record. And in this drama, they were showing the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The director and producer of the drama was a very famous person. He said, here in Bengal, there are so many theaters, you can pay some rupees and see the life of Lord Chaitanya. But we have to do something different. By the sincerity and the earnestness of our will to give Lord Chaitanya's mercy to the world, we must change people's hearts. They practiced this drama for 1 year. Srila Prabhupada's role was Advaitacharya. That's who he was. This is before he met his Guru Maharaj. He was Advaitacharya, and he was playing this role of weeping and crying and calling out for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come to save the suffering people of Kali Yuga. And Srila Prabhupada said, when he was performing as Advaita, he saw in the audience that all the people were crying. If we study the Jaladuta prayers, here is Srila Prabhupada on this cargo ship after 38 days at sea. He suffered heart attacks and seasickness. What is he praying for? And when we read the Jaladuta prayers, we could almost feel Srila Prabhupada from the core of his heart crying in compassion for all of us. In his prayers, he's praying to Krishna. Please, these people, they are so much covered by the modes of passion and ignorance. Prabhupada was feeling for all of us. Please speak through me. Only Krishna, if you give me the words to speak, and if you give them the ability to understand, will they be happy? And Srila Prabhupada, he emphasized in his prayer, by your mercy, Krishna, if you manifest through me, you can make these people happy. That is identical to the mood and the prayers of Sri Advaita Acharya, praying to Krishna to deliver pure devotional service to all of us.
So we, of course, have to follow Srila Prabhupada's example. And that means to spread Krishna consciousness. And we spread that Krishna consciousness because we know that humanity needs to be helped. We are also helped by that effort. Also, we develop our Krishna consciousness. And so spreading Krishna consciousness, becoming Krishna conscious are hand in hand, following in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada. We're doing it as his mission. Is that correct? And we are following that with, I'm even getting a sense in our talk today that you've got your heart and soul absorbed in this. And how do we find that level of absorption in the mood that you're speaking about, the willingness to follow Srila Prabhupada's example? How do we get there?
I am so far away. But Srila Prabhupada taught us in giving we receive. When Srila Prabhupada was once asked, how can we best please you? He said, receive what I've given you and share it with each other and share it with the world. This is the path of bhakti. The more we can access Krishna, the more we could be instruments to give Krishna. And this is so much what Advaita Acharya represented. He spent years doing his sadhana crying for Krishna. Haridas Thakur spent years chanting Krishna's holy names, the Maha Mantra, crying for Krishna to help us. So when we understand what pleases Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas, we know that we need to really deeply go into our sadhana so that we can assist them to give Krishna to others. It is inseparable. Haridas was chanting. Certainly, he was feeling the ecstasy of love of Krishna while he was chanting, but at the same time, he was chanting so that he could best be an instrument of Krishna's compassion to deliver suffering souls. Advaita Acharya was crying tears, calling out Krishna's names to help us. Srila Prabhupada, he left Vrindavan. He sailed on the Jaladuta. He entered into Butler, Pennsylvania, New York City with the prayer to be an instrument of the love of his Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, to give Lord Chaitanya's message to the world. In fact, on the Jaladuta diary, Srila Prabhupada writes in one place that he was feeling so much separation from his home in Vrindavan. He was missing Radha Damodar and Radha Madan Mohan and Radha Govinda and Radha Raman and Radha Gopinath. He said, but so far from Vrindavan, I am happy because I am doing the will of my Guru Maharaj, which is to serve Lord Chaitanya's message to take the holy names to every town and village within this world. So our sadhana should very much be inseparable from empowering and preparing us in such a way that we could really be instruments to help others be Krishna conscious. And at the same time, in helping others to become Krishna conscious, Krishna's pleased. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado. Prabhupada is pleased. And then what? Then our sadhana actually becomes substantial. When we're pleasing the Lord through our outreach, then when we sit down to do our sadhana, Krishna's pleased with our efforts. So spreading Krishna consciousness and awakening Krishna consciousness are inseparable parts of our life.
Mhm. Wow, thank you for that. We have a few minutes left. Could you return back to Sri Advaita Acharya and just tell us some of his pastimes that impacted you the most, or that you feel are some of your favorite pastimes relating to Sri Advaita Acharya?
It's very interesting because in the Adi Leela of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a whole chapter about Sri Advaita Prabhu. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami tells the importance of Advaita Acharya, that Madhavendra Puri was like the seed of Lord Chaitanya's mission. Ishwara Puri was like the development of that seed. And Lord Chaitanya, who was the gardener himself, became the trunk of the tree of devotional service. And on the top of the tree, the trunk grows into two trunks, Nityananda Prabhu and Advaita Prabhu. That is how prominent he is. And in this chapter, the greatest prominence is the greatness of being a servant. Advaita is Krishna, but he wants to serve Krishna. It is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that when Madhavendra Puri was told by Gopal at Govardhan to go to the eastern provinces to get sandalwood for him, on his way, he stopped in Shantipur and met with Advaita Acharya. And there, Advaita Acharya, seeing the love of Madhavendra Puri, he begged Madhavendra Puri for initiation. And he was initiated. So he was a god brother of Lord Chaitanya's guru. And in this spirit, Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna in the mood of Radha, Radha Bhavaduti Subalitam Nomi Krishna Swarupam, he was teaching us through his example how to be a devotee. He always gave honor and respect to Advaita. Advaita was much older than him in age, and he was also a god brother of his guru. So Lord Chaitanya would bow down to Advaita, and here is Advaita. He's God himself. He's in the senior most position. He was the leader of the entire Vaishnava community for years, but he just wanted to serve. And in this regard, Srila Prabhupada cites from Rupa Goswami and other great acharyas that even compared to liberation, Brahman liberation, the happiness that one can experience is like a little particle of a drop compared to the vast, limitless ocean of happiness one gets by offering loving service to Krishna. Krishna himself longs to be a servant. Krishna came as Mahaprabhu to taste the sweetness of serving with love. Advaitacharya, his life and soul was to be the servant of the servant of the servants of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but somehow Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wouldn't allow him to serve him in this sense. Lord Chaitanya was always serving Advaita. So Advaita, there's many beautiful incidents of this. But at one time he was thinking, how could I get Lord Chaitanya to punish me? If he punishes me, then he's actually accepting me in the role of a servant. Now all he does is glorify me and praise me and worship me. So Advaita understood this principle of service, eternal service. Mahaprabhu, when he spoke to Sanatana Goswami, he gave the whole spectrum from the preliminary stages of bhakti to the ultimate perfection of being a follower of the gopis and gopas of Vrindavan. But he established all of it on the foundation of Jivera Swarapoi Krishnera Nityadas, that we are eternally servants of Krishna. Prema Pumartamahan. The ultimate goal of life is prema, love. And that love is experienced in service. Krishna is so supremely beautiful and wonderful. When we love Krishna and serve Krishna, we can taste Krishna's beauty. We can taste Krishna's love. To experience Krishna's love, Advaita is Krishna, but he wanted to taste Krishna's love, not be Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada, very beautifully in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he explains Chintya Beda Beda Tattva, that we are inconceivably simultaneously dualist and non-dualist. We are inconceivably simultaneously one with Krishna, and we are eternal loving servants of Krishna. We're separate from Krishna. Mamaivam so jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. And Krishna is so pleased with the love of his devotee that he becomes subordinate to the love of his devotee. That's the rasa, that is our eternal nature. And Advaita was so much, he was speaking from Srimad Bhagavatam, he was speaking from Bhagavad Gita only for this purpose, to teach the pure devotional service. He was trying to help people to understand that all the fruitive activities of this world, the aspiration for mystic powers, the aspiration for mukti or oneness in Brahman, they are all distractions from our real goal, which is eternal loving service to the Lord. And so he knew this was the heart of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in order to anger Lord Chaitanya, he began to give classes in Shantipur, teaching the impersonalistic conception without bhakti, without prem, that the ultimate goal of life is just to become God. Lord Chaitanya heard rumors in Navadvip that this was happening. So he said to Lord Nityananda, let's go to Shantipur. And it's a beautiful story. They jumped in the Ganga in Navadvip and they floated all the way to Shantipur. And when they came out of the water, and it was right at the banks of of Mother Ganga, was right near the home of Advaita. Advaita was giving his class. And when Lord Chaitanya saw him and he saw Lord Chaitanya, Advaita even more enthusiastically was speaking this monistic idea. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he called out, Advaita, what are you speaking? And Advaita, even more louder, he began to broadcast this idea. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu jumped on the platform where Advaita was and dragged him down and slapped him. And Advaita's wife, Sita Thakurani, she was crying out, Nimai, Nimai, please, he's an old man, spare him. And Advaita was in ecstasy. He said to Lord Chaitanya, where is your worship and glorification of me now? Now you have finally accepted me as your servant by punishing me. And when Lord Chaitanya understood that this was all a trick, he became very embarrassed. But Advaita was dancing in ecstasy and crying. He didn't want to be God. He didn't want to be a senior. He wanted to be a servant of the servant of the servant, because that's where the sweetest nectar is. And this verse that you brought up at the beginning, Gopal Bhatta Prabhu Trinarapi Sunichena, to be more humble than a blade of grass, to be more tolerant and forgiving than a tree, to offer all respect to others without desiring prestige or respect for oneself. In that spirit, Krishna is pleased and he reveals himself in his name, and we can chant constantly. That was the mood of Advaita Prabhu.
Maharaj, we have just a minute or two left. One of the GBC SPT's goal in speaking with you and then the other devotees that we'll be speaking with is to assist the devotees in developing enthusiasm for reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. And one of the most powerful underlying points of our time together is that you have such tremendous enthusiasm. And developing enthusiasm, often, maybe even it's the best way to develop enthusiasm, is to spend time with people who are more enthusiastic about devotional service than you. So we've been very, very fortunate to hear this enthusiastic portrayal of Advaita. And your enthusiasm is like, I actually feel like I'm right there with you, even though we're 1,000 and 2,000 miles away. Give us a little kernel of enthusiasm to read Chaitanya Charitamrita on a more regular basis and a deepening basis. And then I know your time's valuable, and then we'll end. But I want to develop more enthusiasm to read Chaitanya Charitamrita. Please help me.
I'm remembering Gopal Bhatta Prabhu in 1972. I had the good fortune of being in an assembly hearing Srila Prabhupada speak. And after Srila Prabhupada gave his lecture, there were questions. And one person, he asked, Srila Prabhupada, you are speaking of the importance of enthusiasm. What if I do not feel enthusiasm? And Srila Prabhupada's reply was, if you do not feel enthusiasm, then you act enthusiastically. This is tapasya, tapo divyam putra kayena sattvam. For Krishna's pleasure, we're enthusiastic. In one sense, if we're just enthusiastic, then we're happy doing it. But if we don't feel it, but we act in that way for the pleasure of Krishna, that is real devotion. That is sincerity. And if we act enthusiastic, then Prabhupada said Krishna will give us that true enthusiasm. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is so important. Srila Prabhupada, his life work was writing Srimad Bhagavatam with his Bhaktivedanta purports. But in the middle of that translation, Srila Prabhupada felt it was so important to give the devotee community and the world Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So he took a long break from his total focus on Srimad Bhagavatam to give us the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And how enthusiastic he was that it be published and distributed. And most of all, read by the devotees. It's considered the postgraduate study of Srimad Bhagavatam, but with Srila Prabhupada's purports, we can approach directly. Because the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the essence is all contained in the way Srila Prabhupada presents the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And how do we become enthusiastic to read? By reading with enthusiasm. If we associate with devotees and we, even if it's an austerity, act with an enthusiasm to read every day, and we act with an enthusiasm to be with Vaishnavas who inspire us, then Krishna reciprocates. Yayata mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. Srila Prabhupada said that Bhagavad Gita is Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is the incarnation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu along with all of his associates. It is non-different than Lord Chaitanya. The more we're absorbed in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, the more we are absorbed in Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, the Panchatattva, Advaita, Srivas, and Gadadhar. Directly, personally, we are with Krishna, Mahaprabhu, when we are reading Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And if we are enthusiastic in our sincere actions, then Krishna will reciprocate and actually give us the higher taste of enthusiasm. Sometimes there's the saying, first deserve, then desire. That principle can be understood very much, in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. In serving, we develop a taste for service with love. In hearing, Shravanam, in hearing from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, from Prabhupada's books, whatever our state of consciousness, we will actually get the higher taste where we will feel and experience Lord Chaitanya's mercy and all of our Acharya's mercy. Srila Prabhupada explained his purports are his devotional ecstasies. If we actually sincerely apply our consciousness on a regulated basis of absorbing ourselves according to our capacity in hearing from Srila Prabhupada, then we will realize his devotional ecstasies.
Maharaj, thank you so much.
I would like to say one more thing.
Please.
Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, I believe he said that if all the literatures of the entire world were gone and only Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita existed, the world would have enough to attain the ultimate perfection of life.
Yeah.
How much Srila Prabhupada sacrificed to give us Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and how much we should show our gratitude by acting with enthusiasm to hear it, and especially to share it with one another. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is about devotional community. Lord Chaitanya and his associates, you know, they were always completely there for each other. They began a Srivasangam just as a tight devotional community, sharing Krishna with each other. And then from there, they shared with the world. And that is what the International Society for Krishna Consciousness was developed for, to create a family, a community of devotees, local communities, national communities, international communities, where we are all focused on helping one another to overcome the obstacles that are inevitably with us, and take shelter enthusiastically of hearing about Krishna and chanting about Krishna and assisting Prabhupada's, Lord Chaitanya's mission to spread Krishna. And it begins with caring for each other within our movement, and then with this strong family to spread Prabhupada's mission, every town, every village, to try to give people the happiness of Krishna consciousness. Advaitacharya 500 years ago he's Krishna, Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu, with his eyes, he glances and impregnates the entire cosmic manifestation with all living entities. He knows everything. He was seeing 2021. He was seeing the pandemic. He was seeing each and every one of us with all of our struggles and our baggage of karmic background and everything else. He was seeing us individually, personally. He's in our hearts. And out of his love for us, he was crying and crying and crying, Krishna, please come and help these people. And I believe an inseparable part of Advaita's crying was he was crying for Srila Prabhupada to come to give us Krishna consciousness.
Wow. Thank you so much. This has really been the most wonderful time I've had for a very, very, very long time. I just can't say enough. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for spending this time with us. We, of course, very grateful to you that you've started us off in such a fantastic way on this portrayal. We want to remind our audience that we have well over 50 events leading between now and Guru Purnima, and you're going to be coming back sometime yet determined, sometime between March 14th and March 17th, to talk to us about the internal mood of Lord Chaitanya and the approach to Lord Chaitanya is necessary to approach Radha and Krishna. So you're going to tell us more about that in, roughly a month's time. So thank you so much. Once we end our thing, if you could just stay online so that I could personally thank you, as well as thanking you on behalf of our audience. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
গর্জনাদি অহোরাত্র সদ্গুণাম হা কৃষ্ণ রাধিকানাথ প্রার্থনাদি ভাবনা ধূপ দীপ কস্তুরী চ চন্দনাদি লেপনা সীতানাথাদ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথাদ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথাদ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা গঙ্গাবারি মনোহারি তুলসাদি মঞ্জরি কৃষ্ণ জ্ঞান সদা ধ্যান প্রেম বারি ঝরঝরি কৃপাবধি করুণানাথ ভবিষ্যতি প্রার্থনা সীতানাথাদ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথাদ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথাদ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা কৃষ্ণ উচ্চৈঃস্বরে গায়তাম অহে নাথ জগত্রাত মম দৃষ্টি গোচরম দ্বিভুজ করুণানাথ দিয়তাং সুদর্শনম সীতানাথাদ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথাদ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথাদ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা শ্রী অদ্বৈত প্রার্থনার্থ জগন্নাথয়ালয়াম শচী মাতুর গর্ভজাত চৈতন্য করুণাময় শ্রী অদ্বৈত সঙ্গরঙ্গ কীর্তন বিলাসন সীতানাথাদ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথাদ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথাদ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা দ্বৈত চরণারবিন্দ জ্ঞান ধ্যান ভাবনা সদা দ্বৈত পাদ পদ্ম রেণুরাশি ধারণা দেহি ভক্তি জগন্নাথ রক্ষ মাম ভাজনম সীতানাথ দ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথ দ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথ দ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সর্বদাত সীতানাথ প্রাণেশ্বর সদ্গুণা যে জপন্তে সীতানাথ পাদ পদ্ম কেবলা দিয়তাং করুণানাথ ভক্তি যোগ তৎক্ষণাম সীতানাথ দ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথ দ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথ দ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা শ্রী চৈতন্য জয়া দ্বৈত নিত্যানন্দ করুণাময়া একয়ঙ্গ ত্রিধামূর্তি ঐশ্বরাদি সদাবরম জীবত্রাণ ভক্তি জ্ঞান হুঙ্কারাদি গর্জনম সীতানাথ দ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথ দ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা সীতানাথ দ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা দীনহীন নিন্দকাদি প্রেম ভক্তি দায়কাম সর্বদাত সীতানাথ শান্তি পূরণায়কাম রাগ রঙ্গ সঙ্গ দোষ কর্মযোগ মোক্ষণাম সীতানাথ দ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ ভাবনা 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 সীতানাথ দ্বৈত চর নারবিন্দ